This Victorian cemetery is home to over 100,000 people, and not so long ago it ran out of money. It was closed down and left abandoned, eventually being sold to a property developer. Fortunately though, it wasn't replaced by new houses, and it was sold one more time to the local council, preserving its history where today it's run as a charity. But have they managed to turn this place around and secure its future? Well, we're going to head behind the scenes today to find out, and just to learn a little bit about what it's like to run a Victorian cemetery. So let's go and check it out. How long have you been volunteering here?
I think I'm in my 18th year now.
18 years?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. When I retired, I decided that there was no way I was going to stay inactive. I wanted to do things and keep fit. And I saw a bit of a documentary on the telly about the place.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, that could suit me fine. So I came up here and, you know, the rest is history, as you say.
So is it mostly just kind of trying to keep everything tidy and stop it getting overgrown, or are there some bigger parts to work on too?
We have winter projects and summer projects. So in winter, we'll choose an area that's become really overgrown and we remove self-seeded saplings and smaller trees that are growing out of graves, brambles and such like. And then of course we have the problem of Japanese knotweed. I don't know whether you know much about that.
I've heard about it, I've heard bad things, but I don't know too much about it.
Down that area there, it's really bad.
Does it just take over?
Yes.
It's just really aggressive?
Yeah. If it was growing, in spring it would be like that. And by June, it would be above your head.
Oh, right. So you don't want that?
No.
There's something there that's fallen down. Well, it's across.
Oh, yeah. Oh, is that from here then?
So that will be from there. They called that Pam's Patch. I started doing it, and a few years ago now, I saw this plinth and I thought something's come off that plinth. So I dug all around, because sometimes you unearth stuff. Couldn't find it. So we were having our lunch once. We always sit around the back there, and I said, what's in that box? And they said, oh, it's a statue. We don't know where it's come from. So I had a look, and it was this white angel. So I said, you don't think she's come off that plinth? Nah. Anyway, after lunch, I got a tape measure and I measured the plinth and I measured her base, and it was exact. And I said, she's come off there. And they said, well, she hasn't been on there for at least 50 years because she used to be in the office, and there's a photograph of her in the office 50 years ago. We tried to pick her up. She was just so heavy, it was impossible. So I was doing my patch along here, and a lady come past. She said, is that Pam? So I said, yeah. She said, you don't remember me? And I said, no, I don't. She said, I was a nurse. Okay. I was a patient of yours 3 times at the infirmary. And do you know, her name just came to me out of the blue. So I said, oh, what are you doing now? She said, I'm in charge of parks and cemeteries.
All right.
And I said, are you? Anyway, I was telling her about this. She said, oh, let me see the angel. So I took her around, showed her, and that. Next morning, up rocks this huge truck with these lifting stuffs and everything. And they lifted it from right over the top, brought it around and put her in place. Wow. So that's amazing, isn't it?
Is it quite satisfying though, just when you've...
Really, truly. Yeah. That was amazing. I mean, they put my photograph in a magazine and did an article and everything. I was so blown away that a woman could do something. But they're really good at the lads. When I first started here, there was me and 16 men.
Oh, really?
And they were absolutely brilliant, you know.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you about, because it's come up with a few other people I've been chatting to, and I think when I met you for the first time, you mentioned something about this as well, and it's just to do with, obviously there's a better way to phrase it, but the cemetery is built around the death of people, but from the sounds of it, it's not like a somber experience for the volunteers, and it sounded like you had sort of a really positive perspective on that as somebody who's been working here for a long time.
Yeah, I think that I was for a period of time when I first came here an acting registrar combined with teaching, and so you got to meet families and funeral directors firsthand. So you're coming face to face with grief, I suppose, firsthand through attending burials and so on. So there is that aspect. But I think also families are very glad to have their loved ones laid to rest in a place that is, you know, a wonderful place in itself. And my parents are buried here too. I think there are those positive aspects, and we try to be as caring as possible when we're working with families, when they want to put a headstone up or another memorial.
For anyone that might not know, a death cafe is just like a casual, welcoming social group for anyone who's dealing with grief and wants to just kind of talk about that and need some help going through that. Is that?
That's right.
Yeah.
And you can say as much or as little as you like, and you know that everybody else there is you know, has had that experience.
Yeah.
So it's tea, biscuits, and a chat.
Yeah. So this is the unsolved murder.
Well, this is a recently interesting grave we found, and our researchers got to work on it and found that this guy, Harrison, was a taxi driver. He was called Graham, and he was murdered, and it's unsolved.
So this was a story that was just kind of lost.
Lost.
Nobody knew.
Nobody knew about it. And we have got researchers trying to find out what the police are doing about it.
Yeah.
now. But it is a long time ago.
I mean, I guess there could be others like this, because there are so many here.
Yeah, we know that there's 24,000 grave plots, and we know that we've only managed to refurbish about a fifth of the 26-acre site. And we slowly and surely, if we get more volunteers, it's the care and maintenance which is a problem.
Yeah. Tell me if this is too personal of a question, but has working here kind of helped your perspective around death and grief? Because it can be quite easy, I think, for speaking from my experience, to be disconnected from that. And then when it does happen in your life, you're not necessarily sure what to do. Whereas things like the death cafes are a great opportunity for people who maybe don't have much family or network, people to talk to and support in that time.
Yes, I think they are a really good resource, and also just being here as part of volunteers, all of us have had an experience of bereavement, and just the opportunity to normalise talking about that, I think is very, very helpful. So before I became a volunteer here, it's not something I've thought about. I've had to think about it since then. It is helpful because it's not something you can push to one side because it's going to happen.
Yeah, there's no getting around it, really, is there? Yeah. I don't know about you, but I'm learning a lot of new things today. I came to visit here by myself a good few weeks back now, just to make a short video, and there were a lot of things that I didn't know about this place at the time. And one of the major ones, which might make me look a bit silly, but I don't mind, was how to navigate the layout of this place, because there is a map of the cemetery, and I pretty naively assumed that all the letters on the map referred to surnames, not really thinking at all, but assuming that they were laid out based on surnames. But that's not how it works. So all the sections are lettered, and then you'll see either a C or a U, consecrated or unconsecrated. What does that mean though?
So the side we're on now is consecrated, so it was blessed by the Church of England.
Okay.
So, and then the other side was for all other religions, so Catholics, Quakers, Jewish people. Right. So they were all buried on one side. And it's not really practiced anymore that one religion has to go on one side and another religion go on the other.
Yeah.
Now it's a lot more open, but at the time it was more rigid in how they were doing things.
Yeah. And is there a difference between a graveyard and a cemetery?
There is a difference between a graveyard and a cemetery. So a cemetery is not associated with a church itself. Okay. So a cemetery is more independent, I guess. And a churchyard would be a graveyard, say. So it's attached to a church, yeah. They're kind of used interchangeably as well.
Okay.
But yeah, that's the definition. Yeah.
So
why is this one so notorious? Is that the right word?
Well, yes and no, you'll find out as you're here, but what Matthew Hughes' Victoria Cross has very prestigious claim of is the very first batch of soldiers to be awarded the Victoria Cross, and I think there were 56 of them in Hyde Park in London. That was the only time that batch of soldiers, Matthew Hughes included in them, was awarded the medal by the Queen herself.
Wow.
Every time after that they were presented by regimental squadron leaders or people of similar importance, but that's the only time that the Queen awarded them, and one of them was to Matthew Hughes. Very local man. He was a soldier at the age of 15, but a bit of a character, as you'll hear. Matthew decided to buy himself out of the army just before the Battle of Crimea, and then he went back into it when he realised he could get a bit of money by signing up. To say he was a character is the understatement of the day. He was in the Regimental Defaulters book, which speaks for itself really. The regiment he was in was the Royal Fusiliers, quite a prestigious Fusilier regiment, and he was in the Regimental Defaulters time 22 times. Now I know one or two people with forces records, and they say that they've never heard of that. Half a dozen times is a lot, but to win it 22 times is incredible. The day after he was awarded the Victoria Cross, he was promoted to a corporal. The next day he was demoted back to a private.
All right.
And he was a private all the way through the majority of his career as a soldier. Unfortunately, we don't know what the misdemeanors were, but they were significant in several of them. He was awarded the Victoria Cross for, as it says on the stone, in action at the Crimea, Sebastopol, and very appropriately with the VC. There are some tales about various things about what the medal was made of, and one that I've heard and is very well ascribed to is it was made of the gunmetal of the Russian guns that we were fighting against in the Battle of Crimea, and that's the battle that Matthew Hughes was fighting at. So it might be that his medal and the medal of all VCs since then were actually from a gun that Matthew and his regiment were fighting against. His medal itself is would you believe, at the Tower of London. It beggars belief how much that particular medal is worth. I'm a great lover of the Antiques Roadshow, and generally par for the course now for a standard Victoria Cross, if that's not a misdemeanour of a name, is £250,000.
Wow.
But for one to be awarded to this chap, that regiment, for it to be in the Tower of London, and more importantly for it to be the very first batch of those awarded, it beggars belief how much it's worth.
This is sort of where all the more recent burials are taking place. And if you just even walk up here a little bit, I mean, these are new plots here, but then we have quite old plots that are just behind it. Sort of mixes the old and the new. And then when you come back up here as well, we have a cremation ashes area here where the trees are, but then you're right next to the historical quarter. So this is where the wealthy would have been buried in the 19th century. So it's quite interesting to see the juxtaposition of both types. So obviously you have these really grand Victorian era style monuments here that are quite tall and quite in your face and quite, you know, they're showing how much money they had in life and in death. And then you're here in the modern section and you can see how the style has changed quite a lot as well. You know, the more standardized headstones down there. Whereas here you've got the draped urns, you've got the obelisks, you've the crosses. There's quite a different way that people were displaying grave monuments at the time. People just come in and they kind of are blown away by these monuments because they are so big. And they were done like in a time where they didn't have half the materials or equipment, I should say, that to, you know, carve these. You know, a lot of these are all done by hand. You know, it's just crazy to think about. And there's just so much variety to them as well, and the fact that they've stood the test of time, which is quite amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
It is very impressive, and it continues to be impressive to this day. It would have been impressive at the time, but now it seems to be even more impressive with the passage of time, because we can really think about the work that would have went into them and the cost. It would have been a huge cost to families at the time, which also does show the huge wealth that was in Bradford at the time as well from the textile industry.
He was asking for people to come and help clear the graves because they needed weeding. So I volunteered and I've been doing it ever since.
Wow.
But I enjoy it.
Yeah.
In the winter, it's fine. In the spring, it's great. And in the summer.
Yeah.
And I'm on on one or two of the photographs as well.
Oh, really? Oh, and the boards?
Yes,
All right.
yeah, because I'm going like that.
All right.
We estimated, this is going back to the 80s, that we'd need £48,000 a year to run the place. This is in the 80s, and they gave us 20, and it's been that ever since. So it's incumbent on us as a charity to raise us the extra money that we need. And we worked out, if we didn't have ground volunteers, somebody to look after the place and keep it in the same state it is now, would cost £150,000 a year. So they're actually getting a bargain.
And yeah, this side you were saying is probably something a lot of people don't think about, and it's that there's limited space.
Yeah.
And that's the main thing that keeps the funding coming in for the
Absolutely.
cemetery.
If we didn't have burials, then we would go out of business very quickly. So this is an area that was left to waste, and this will make an ideal plot. So we relied on the sort of goodwill of local companies. Crompton's, for instance, cleared a load of soil from here. We've levelled the place out, and then we've got the local grave digger who will be rectifying some of these graves that have collapsed, and this will become our premier area. So we think we can get about 90 plots, and of course each plot could contain up to 3-4 people, so this is our future.
Yeah.
So although it looks wrecked at the moment,
keep it going.
This is the thing that will sort of keep us going.
Yeah.
But we can show you some of the issues we have as a cemetery. I think you find, of course, is that we've got bits of monuments all over the place.
Yeah.
And we had a little bit of a scare when we saw these trees growing right next to the perimeter wall. And the ones marked with a cross or marked with a red dot need to come down.
Is this your wall, the cemetery's wall?
Well, this is Bradford Council's responsibility.
Okay.
But they want those trees out, and we can't afford to take them out because you need specialist equipment. But of course, these are not fully mature trees, they're not fully grown yet. So they're still growing, and what happens, of course, you end up with roots coming through the wall. You can see subtle bowing of the wall. All the pointing seems to have disappeared. And it's a big wall.
I was going to say, it's massive.
It brings its challenges.
Yeah.
So this is our future.
Yeah.
Hoping later this year that this will be in use. We had a tour by the Victorian Society, who said that it's probably the best cemetery they've ever seen in England, which is quite an accolade.
Yeah.
But it of course relies on free labour of our volunteers to keep it looking
absolutely.
neat, and you can see the work involved.
Yeah.
And this is the busiest time of the year, where it's extremely fertile ground. I wonder why, but it's very fertile ground, and stuff does grow quite successfully.
Last time I was here, you told me a bit about this, but when I was by myself, I had no idea what that was. I wondered if you could give us a bit of a...
I think this
because it's such an eye-catcher when you come into the cemetery.
It is. It's quite unusual. So he's one of the guys that sort of funded the cemetery, Joseph Smith, and it's a magnificent sort of monolith. And what's quite unusual about it is that if you look at the other end of the cemetery and you see the Quaker graves, this guy's a Quaker.
Okay.
Now Quakers everybody's equal in death, so all the gravestones are laid flat. There's no embellishment on them, no decoration, except this guy.
Yeah, he's really gone for it.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. It's kind of a difficult video to summarise in an outro. So many stories, so many things happening and have happened here. I'm not quite sure where to start. But I do want to say a massive thank you to everyone at Undercliffe Cemetery for allowing us to come in and showing us around, sharing all of that with us. Hopefully you've enjoyed those stories. They haven't asked me to say any of the following, but if you are local and interested and you're tempted by volunteering, please do check it out, get in touch with them. If you're not local and you like what they're doing here, you can make a donation. And as you can see, it's not being wasted. This is such a huge undertaking here to kind of keep this place going. And all the volunteers are doing an amazing job and a hard job. All year round, they're here trimming the grass, tending to all the graves, and a load of other tasks as well. It's not easy work, believe me. If you've got any more stories about this place or other cemeteries that you want to share, let us know in the comments as always. And if you've got any questions, pop those down there as well. I'll do my best to get them answered for you. A massive thank you as well to every single one of you who's been supporting the channel recently and making these trips and videos possible. Hopefully you've enjoyed this one. Plenty more on the way soon, I promise you. So fingers crossed, I'll see you there on the next one.